All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry. You guys still swapping numbers over there? Yeah. All right. Take just a second. We'll get started here in a moment. How is everybody doing? Good. I apologize. We had a couple of snow days, but that happens. Yeah. Hi. It's okay, Kathy. All right, so we are on the fourth Sunday of Ordinary Time. I think it's the fourth Sunday of January, too. No, it's the fifth Sunday of January it's going to be. Good Lord. Okay, time is going. We just heard last week in the Gospel, we heard Luke's prologue, his kind of mission statement, and then we heard Jesus kind of come in and give his mission statement. We're about to jump onto the other half of that story this week. But first we touch on some of the Old Testament scriptures. The first reading is Jeremiah chapter 1. It's verses 4 through 5, and then it jumps to 17 through 19. And this is the part everybody hates. Do we have any volunteers who would like to read the first reading? Elaine! Yes.
A reading from the book of the prophet Jeremiah. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I dedicated you. A prophet to the nations, I appointed you. But do you gird your loins? Stand up and tell them all that I command you. Be not crushed on their account, as though I would leave you crushed before them. For it is I, this day, who have made you a fortified city, a pillar of iron, a wall of brass, against the whole land, against Judah's kings and princesses, against its priests and people. They will fight against you, but not prevail over you, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thank you, Elaine. Anything rising to the surface immediately? No worries. If it does pop up, just shout it out. So this is not the very beginning of the book of Jeremiah, but it's the very beginning of Jeremiah reporting what God has given him to say. It starts out kind of just giving a little lineage and talking about who Jeremiah is, when Jeremiah was preaching. And Jeremiah is preaching at the very end of the Jerusalem monarchy, of the Jerusalem kingdom. He's seeing things go completely downhill until the exile comes. But the beginning is really powerful. The word of the Lord came to me. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I dedicated you. A prophet to the nations, I appointed you. I really don't think it's on purpose, but it's really powerful that that's coming this week, because this is the week we're trying to pray especially hard for the unborn. But there's a couple things in that, and one is the idea of having a vocation, of God having a plan for us. And I've heard arguments both ways. Is everyone born with one vocation, or does God have two or three vocations in mind based on how the person chooses? I don't know, but for Jeremiah, it's pretty clear. Jeremiah was created to be a prophet. And he uses two words. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That word know there's a lot going on there. One of it is saying, I knew who I was making. I knew who you were. But it also kind of gives a sense that I was watching over you. I was aware of you. And in other places in the Bible, especially like in Exodus, they focus that God is watching and seeing his people and what they're going through. So God's kind of saying, not only do I know who you are, but I'm staying aware of you and your situation. And then he says, I dedicated you and I appointed you. And these are, of course, nowadays, we think of dedication when you name a gymnasium after the basketball coach who retired after 45 years or something. This Jewish word for dedication it's closer to consecration, being set aside, being especially made holy for this task. And that's really powerful to think that even for one person God has that, let alone how that might be something for all of us. That God has that mission for us, that God is aware of us and setting us aside for something. He goes on from there and he says, a prophet to the nations I appointed you. This is really, really interesting because in the book of Jeremiah, as we read, Jeremiah does not prophesy to the nations. Jeremiah prophesies to Judah. And if we go down, it says, against Judah's kings and princes, against its priests and people. They will fight over you but not prevail. So there's something really interesting here in this kind of double scope of Jeremiah's ministry. One, he's prophesying to the very specific people in a very specific place, but it's meant to ring out to the nations forever beyond that. We skip a few verses. Of course, we skip verse 6, which is kind of the verse they quote to like grade schoolers and middle schoolers all the time, and they must be sick of it. I'm sick of people saying it to him. But he says, "Oh Lord, I am too young." But the Lord answered me, "Say not you are too young," and all this stuff. When Jeremiah is saying that, he's saying, "I'm not 30 yet," which is kind of you become a man at 13 in the Jewish culture, but you become a minister or someone who can have a position of authority at 30, and he's not there yet. That's when Jesus starts his ministry, we know, and actually we're about to jump to that. But he keeps going, and he says all this stuff, and then he jumps down, and he says, a prophet to the nations I appointed you, and then our reading jumps and it says, but you do gird up your loins. And there's all this stuff, tell them all I command you, be not crushed. I have made you a fortified city, a pillar of iron, a wall of brass against the whole land. It's kind of, it's good imagery, right? On someone and we know Jeremiah is the prophet who at least reports getting the most grief from the people he's prophesying to. Whether he's, I wouldn't want to say he's a little bit of a drama queen, but he's very clear about how he feels and how hard things are going for him. The other prophets had it bad too, but maybe they just didn't feel the need to talk about it. But there's another thing in this, and it's once again because we skip verses that makes it come out, and he starts out and he gives him this vision, and he sees a watching tree, he sees a boiling cauldron, and what he's seeing is these kind of symbolic representations of the nations, that is Babylon, coming to destroy Jerusalem. In verse 15, God is saying to Jeremiah, lo, I am summoning all the kingdoms of the north. Each king shall come and set up his throne at the gateways of Jerusalem, opposite her walls and all around her city, the cities of Judah. So there's this image, there's this message of Judah is going to be besieged by all the kingdoms of the world. Well, not all the kingdoms of the world, but all the kingdoms of the known world for Judah. And And then he goes, and after he takes this image of being besieged, he goes to Jeremiah and says, but you, I will make you a fortified city yourself, a pillar of iron, a wall of brass. In comparison to the walls that are going to be besieged, you're going to be besieged from within, and you are going to be the stronger city. That's I don't know. There's something about that that's really powerful, even more than just the image, but the contrast. How weak and vulnerable the world is, or the church is, or the group we belong to, or the Bible I'm reading from, compared to the strength that God can give to us as individuals. And all this is, of course, going to talk about the fact that people don't want to listen to Jeremiah. Jeremiah has it rough, and God needs to give him this strength, because he has to prophesy against the kings and princes and priests and people. And he says they will fight over you but not prevail over you. He has to say, tell them all I command you and be not crushed on their account. That's a very strong message we hear often, because when we are prophetic, we come up with resistance. And it's, honestly, I think it's a place we can sometimes make ourselves martyrs sometimes. What we have to key in this verse is, stand up and tell them all that I command you. That the prophet isn't looking for controversy. Unfortunately, there's so many people in the world and in our church who are playing up the controversy, and they want the fight. But God is saying all that I command you to say. And I think when we discern what God actually wants us to say, we'll be fighting, the good fight, rather than just fighting for the sake of fighting. But I digress. I'm going to get off that soapbox. Any thoughts or questions?
Andrew, are you saying that people didn't want to listen to him, and so God had to make him strong in order for him to continue and pursue in this prophetic? Okay.
Jeremiah is the only, well, not the only prophet, but the only major prophet. He complains against God, and he's kind of constantly wailing to God about how no one's listening, how he's suffering. He gets put in jail, and it's one of those things like God doesn't give him an easy life, but God makes him a strong person. Even though there's a few times Jeremiah breaks down, but God keeps picking him back up. Anything else? Good? All right. The Psalm, Psalm 71, I will sing of your salvation. It's kind of nice and alliterative there. But as we react to this first reading, we say, I will sing of your salvation. We hear the cantor saying, in you, our Lord, I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Something that Jeremiah is going to go through, something we can be afraid of if we need to be prophetic. In your justice, rescue me and deliver me. Incline your ear to me and save me. Like incline your ear, almost like know me, be aware of me, like God says to Jeremiah. Be a rock of refuge, a stronghold. You are my rock and my fortress. Boy, that just resonates perfect, doesn't it? God has just told Jeremiah that he is going to make him like a fortress as an individual, and we are being reminded that all this strength is coming from God. God is the real fortress. God's power is what protects us, and God will rescue me from the hand of the wicked. Very powerful to think about. Very powerful. The epistle, the second reading, we had, I think, last week and the week before, we were reading Corinthians, right? We heard that Sunday. We are continuing through Corinthians, and we're getting to that good part that everybody likes, that you hear at every single Catholic wedding. And we're doing Corinthians 12:31 through 13:13. Do we have any volunteers? Thank you, Joan.
Sir, tell me what it is again.
12:31.
Through 13:13?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But strive for the greater gifts, and I will show you a still more excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoings, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we shall see face to face. Now I know only in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. And the greatest of these is love. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. That's one we've all heard a lot of times. Was there anything that just maybe struck us a little stronger for the first time, or even the 50th time, listening to that, taking that in?
I think that verses 4 through 7, to me, are something that we could all kind of reread maybe once a month in our lives and try to remember, because sometimes we forget and are the cruelest and most inconsiderate to the people that we love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can attest to that. You just ask Melissa, and she'll tell me how good I am at love. Don't actually ask her; she's too nice to. But
there's so much there. I mean, it's just jam-packed. And I was just thinking about, they say that the divorce rate today is so extremely high. And there's so many angles to think about. Do I really love this person? Do I really, divorce? It's just, St. Paul really had it, I'll say.
Yeah, it's almost like poetry.
oh, it is. It reads like that. It has such a rhythm, doesn't it? At least in English. I don't know in Greek. Maybe it sounded really bad in Greek, but in English it flows. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So, of course, I've if you saw any of the recordings, but the Corinthian community has been fighting, and that's why Paul is sending this letter to them. They've been kind of having rivalries over who baptized you, what spiritual gift do you have. I'm speaking in tongues, I'm more holy than everybody. I'm prophesying, I'm more holy than everybody. It got to the point where the rich people actually were having a separate mass than the poor, which it's pretty despicable, really. But they got to that sense where everyone had their own elitism, everyone had their own kind of sense of self-value that transcended the good of the whole church. And so Paul talks about all these gifts, and he lists them once, and he lists them again. And he's extra careful to kind of, I guess, put emphasis on the ones that he thinks are the most important, in contrast to the ones that were getting the most prestige in the community. He starts out and he says, strive eagerly for the greatest spiritual gifts. Nothing wrong with wanting God to work through you like this.
So are faith, hope, and love gifts?
They are, actually. Gifts that we have to respond to, like all of God's gifts.
They're gifts like speaking in tongues and prophecy?
Yeah. Beforehand he talks about faith as a gift, and he talks about faith besides.
Yes.
He talks about it besides those other gifts, but and we'll get there. We will get there. But just what he's wanting to say is, all these gifts are good, but love is the basis for the real value of them. Any spiritual gift that God gives us, God usually gives us, and we have our free will as well. God just doesn't use us like puppets. Very occasionally, I'll hear a priest say something like, "Oh, God used me as a puppet just then. I did not have that, and words came out of my mouth I was not expecting." But for the most part, God wants to give us a gift to work with Him. So, unfortunately, when we don't want to do that, we can warp those gifts and use them against the community. There's a tons of cases. We've probably all known like one or two really charismatic priests who ended up hurting a church because they were so used to having everyone wrapped around their finger that anyone who wasn't on board just got pushed aside because they'd been given a gift by God, but they'd forgotten who they were supposed to use it for, and it became about them. And stuff like that, it becomes harmful even when we don't intend the harm. There's a huge continuing debate in the church right now about a Marian apparition in Czechoslovakia. And one of the things they're saying is it's become divisive. Even all the healings and everything, there's some ideas and some rivalries that have grown out of it, and the church is being really careful with it. Those spiritual gifts that God gives us can be used with the wrong motivations, or they can have the wrong ends when love isn't guiding them. And like I said before, and this is my soapbox, there's a lot of people in our church nowadays who are really good at talking about the faith, really good at arguing it, and they're flooding the airwaves. But they don't really show a whole lot of love. It's more about winning the fight. It's more about having the last word. And I think that's pushing people away from the church. So anyway, there's enough there. But another thing we were taught in school in moral theology, like there's a difference between an objectively good action and the person being pleasing to God. If someone goes and works at the soup kitchen 7 days a week, God is very glad those people are being served. But if that person has resentment in their hearts for the person they're serving, they are gaining nothing from that in terms of spirituality. They're only getting, like, their purification, their purgatory, their process of coming to God is only getting harder because they're wrapping up something ungodly in something godly, and it's going to make them confused. regardless, the love is what makes it valuable to us and valuable in the long run to the whole church and to God. And he gives 15 characteristics of love. And this is the part we were talking about, how rhythmic it is, how beautiful, it's like poetry. And that's wonderful, but I also think that works against us when we're reading this, because we tend to read it in rhythm and read it fast. And we read all that, and it's like we read it and then say, okay, can you repeat 4 of those back to us? Can we? I might be able to get 3, but it's usually based on my memory from having heard it before than what I've just heard. So there's a couple I would like to pull out and just highlight, but if there's one anybody that's really resonating, like I never thought of that one aside from the whole poem, feel free to shout it out. The biggest one for me, and coming from the theological point of view, it does not seek its own interests. The way the church defines love is willing the good of another as an other. Love is wanting what is best for someone else, for themselves, not with reference to your relationship with them, not because what's good for them is good for me, not because you get credit for that. It's not about a warm, fuzzy feeling. Love is about wanting what is objectively best for another person. And when our own interests are in that, it doesn't necessarily negate love, but it gets tricky. Immanuel Kant, the philosopher in the 19th century, he kind of stands in this really tricky, unfortunate position between philosophy that was appealing to God and philosophy that kind of started denying God. That everyone before him had this great set of metaphysics. Kant came along and, in all honesty, was seeking the good, seeking God, but also stumbled upon a way of thinking about the world that allowed people to think like there's no meaning and there's no truth. But in his ethics, he was trying to, in ethics, come out with rules that you would never, ever break, and that's how you are ethical. And he could only come up with one really good one that he said, I'm sure this is a rule I can never, ever break. And he said, never treat a person as a means, only as an ends.
As a what?
As an ends.
Okay.
When you treat someone as a means, you're using them. That's even if it's good for them, that's not love, because you're seeking your own interest through that person. If you're treating them as the ends, that's love, because you're wanting what's best for them for them. Does that make sense?
I think the last 2 lines are, so I'm thinking about love believing all things. Love believes all things. Love hopes all things. I can understand the bears all things and the endures all things, but the other 2, I'm having trouble understanding how love makes you believe all things. Like, you're not supposed to believe everything out there.
Mm-hmm.
You can believe in someone, or you can believe in love, but then you're getting so esoteric that it almost, like, it's whimsical. Love believes all things. I don't get it.
I trip over that one too. One thing that I think is helpful is we go up and it says it rejoices with the truth, not in wrongdoing. And some people will say that confrontation and like injury, and when we have to bash heads together, the real purpose of that is to find the truth together, not to win a fight, but rejoices in the truth, and thus it can believe all things. So Paul isn't saying that there's no truth and love makes you go everywhere or
Yeah,
believe
it doesn't-
anything, because he
And
He
hope
said
all
that.
things like, does that mean like have faith and hope that hope for, I'm more of a, I like when it says, it is not rude, it is not, but these esoteric last two lines to me don't have as much meaning in my life, because I really, it's kind of out there in the universe floating and twinkling, and I really don't know what it means.
Mickey,
And
go
her
ahead.
I have a sister, she's in heaven now, but that just reminds me so much of her, believes all things. I mean, she would never, ever think that you would lie or tell her something that wasn't truth or partial truth or whatever. And when I think of her love for her son, who was a disaster, I mean, she just believed everything that this young man told her, and she hoped all the best for him. That's how I see that.
But should she have done that? I mean, should she have believed?
That was love. That was her love for
But
him.
yeah, I know, and then that's why I
don't know,
have
woulda, coulda,
trouble
shoulda,
with
but
that.
That was her love.
Because I don't know that you should believe everything that you're told because you love somebody, because I don't know if that's the best thing to do.
I-
You know,
I don't know, I could judge what's good for somebody else, but that was good for her.
Huh. Well, and you know, I feel both of you, because Joan, there are times when you really love somebody, you got to call them out for some BS, right? I can say for me, when I call someone out because I love them, for me it's a very slippery slope, and this doesn't mean it's automatically like that, but when I don't believe somebody, then I start wondering what's motivating them. When I don't want to hope in the good for somebody, then I find myself tempted to put that person in a box and think I've got them figured out and I can predict what they're going to do. And when I do that, I lose my sense of love for somebody, because they're no longer someone. I might want what's best for them, but the way I would approach that would be manipulation or control.
I know, but that doesn't
And-
mean that you don't love them. I mean, if your child comes to you and says, "I washed your car. The car's sitting dirty in the driveway," and you look at them and you think, "I love you with all my heart. I would give my life for you, but I don't believe you, and I don't believe what you're saying, but it has nothing to do with my love for you." It
Yeah.
just, it's sort of like, and if you do believe them, then are you doing what's best for that person that you love by swallowing it hook, line, and sinker? I don't know, it's the last two
Yeah.
lines give me pause.
I don't blame you at all. It really is tough.
Is it possible you could take those two last lines and just distill them down to unconditional?
I couldn't
Maybe.
hear you. Unconditional love.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That no matter how often you're lied to, no matter how often you're mistreated, that your love is returned with, distrust or abuse of any form, that you still love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Isn't that sort of what those last two lines
Well-
are saying?
I don't know.
I get it.
It might be. It might be. And it's. I like how it says it hopes all things,
Yeah.
because then you're always hoping that things are going to turn out right for the person. But yeah, and Dan, you really hit something. I read in a book once, it said, and maybe it's not going to fix it for us, but it might help us reconcile. It said, love has to be unconditional, but a relationship always has to be conditional. So like your love and your belief in a person that is unconditional doesn't mean that you're going to believe everything they say in a relationship with you. Maybe there's something there, but I don't know. Boy, we need someone smarter than any of us to figure this out definitively. But that actually might play into the next thing that Paul says. He talks about all this stuff will cease, the prophecies will cease, the tongues will cease, all this stuff that God is using to build up the church right now. It's a tool, it's a method, it's a gift, but that's not the end game. And he says, when I was a child, I talked as a child, think as a child, reasoned as a child. Now I put aside childish things. We see indistinctly as in a mirror, but then face to face. It's interesting because in other letters, Paul will talk about the fullness of the mystery has been revealed to us. But here he's saying, oh boy, we don't really know. He says, at present I know partially, then I shall know fully, as I am fully known. Well, God kind of already does know us. But he's saying, if we're trying to put it in our terms right now, we're going to end up reducing it. He's talking about a lot of stuff like knowledge will pass away. He says prophecy and tongues, all these expressions of God are not gonna last. All these things, standout things, the fireworks are not gonna last. But he says faith, hope, and love remain, and the greatest of these is love. No, sorry, I'm pulling this to make sure I've got my notes. Corinth was famous for making mirrors, and mirrors in the ancient world were not half as good as ours are today. They were like polished brass. So you would know if you had a zit, but trying to actually reach it and pop it would be tough, you know. And Paul is saying, boy, if we're operating off of our kind of limited spiritual experience and knowledge, then two things happen. One is that we kind of circumvent it and think we understand and know it, and we end up putting it in a box and we can stop loving it and start using it, like I tend to do. The other thing is, he says that the real knowledge is being known and fully known in the next world. What is it? There's a couple of things I like to reference. One is, Thomas Aquinas, one of, if not the greatest theologian of Christianity. He writes, his books come out to, one of his books is more than the entire Harry Potter series. That's not even some of his others. And he's praying, not only is he really a really good abstract, logical, reasonable thinker, like he can put anything into a grid and make it easy to understand. And he does this, but he's also mystical, and he's praying one night, and he wakes up from this deep mystical experience of God's love, and he actually tries to burn all of his books. He says, this is straw, this is garbage, it doesn't work. It's true, and it's a great articulation of the truth. But it's nothing compared to the love of God. It's one of the things we often do today is when I watch YouTube channels and get myself all revved up because this one person is kind of banging the drum of Thomas Aquinas. I kind of want to say, that's great, but like, knowledge is not necessarily love. And Thomas Aquinas himself tried to throw it all away for love. And I wonder if he was really saying, wow, this is not all that helpful when you're not experiencing God's mystical love for you. I don't know, though. The other thing that makes it stand out for me is, everyone's seen Les Mis probably, right?
I didn't hear
Some
you
of the
say-
ladies at least, Les Mis,
Oh, yeah.
the musical. It's one of very few musicals I will admit to liking, okay? But in the very end, they have the line that I think makes the whole thing. They say, when you've loved another, you've seen the face of God. Knowledge, as we see it, speaking in tongues or prophecy, as esoteric and mysterious and wonderful as that can be, the love is the real home of the knowledge, the real home of the truth. It is the real insight into who God is and who we are. At least that's what I think. And I think Paul is trying to point us there from where they're making comparisons, what they say, what they do, where they come from, what gifts they have, what they can accomplish. He's saying, no, it has to be all aimed for the good of each other. And when we do that, when we find the pure love, that's when you really, really know God. Of course, that's the Franciscan point of view. The Dominicans, they'll say, well, you'll only love God when you know God. And the Franciscans will say, no, we only really know God when we love God. And I'm sure in heaven there'll be some great debate, and the Dominicans will of course be embarrassed, but it's not to be known how that comes together on earth. Sorry, Dominicans. The gospel is Luke chapter 4, 21 through 30, straight through 8 verses. We are overlapping last week. Do we have any volunteers? Even one volunteer? I see people pointing at you or me. You? Okay.
Reading according to the Gospel of Luke. Jesus began speaking in the synagogue, saying, "Today this scripture passage is fulfilled in your hearing." And all spoke highly of him and were amazed at the gracious words that came from his mouth. They also asked, "Isn't this the son of Joseph?" He said to them, "Surely you will quote me this proverb, 'Physician, cure yourself,' and say, 'Do here in your native place the things that we heard were done in Capernaum.'" And he said, "Amen, I say to you, no prophet is accepted in his own native place. Indeed, I tell you, there were many widows in Israel in the days of Elijah, when the sky was closed for 3.5 years and a severe famine spread over the entire land. It was to none of these that Elijah was sent, but only to a widow in Zarephath, in the land of Sidon. Again, there were many lepers in Israel during this time of Elisha, the prophet, yet not one of them was cleansed, but only Naaman the Syrian. When the people in the synagogue heard this, they were all filled with fury. They rose up, drove him out of the town, and led him to the brow of the hill on which their town had been built, to hurl him down headlong. But Jesus passed through the midst of them and went away. The word of the Lord.
Praise to you. Thank you, Mickey. What hits us right away from that? Is there anything that hits us right away from that?
Jesus lost his temper, kind of. He didn't lose his temper. He just became aggravated that they wanted something that wasn't to the point of what he was there to give.
Interesting. Now, I'm going to disagree with you, Joan, and I'm only going to do it because it doesn't say Jesus lost his temper.
No, it
and
doesn't.
there's only one time in the God. And sorry, I'm getting on another soapbox. People say this all the time. Oh, Jesus got angry. He cleansed the temple. It never says he got angry. It just says he walked in there with a bullwhip and turned over the tables.
Yeah.
There is only one time in the Gospels that it says Jesus got angry, and it's when he's curing the man who has a withered hand on the Sabbath. And he looks at the Pharisees and he says, "Isn't it better to do good than do evil?" And they won't answer him. Because they know they're wrong, but they're just standing there. And they're basically standing there passively saying, we'd rather his hand was still hurt. than break the Sabbath law. And that makes Jesus angry. That they would, not only that they would deny what he's saying, but they would do it in such a way that would throw another person under the bus under the pretense of pleasing God. I can understand why that would make Jesus angry. But in this, it doesn't say so. And this is just my personal thing, Joan. I like to.
Angry, and I'm gonna re-say slightly aggravated.
He very well could be. I like to imagine him saying this very calmly, very lovingly, almost sadly. But we don't know. We don't know. It starts off, and we're going from last week, Jesus gets up and he reads the scroll from Isaiah. The Lord has anointed me, put his spirit upon me, brings sight to the blind, liberty to captives, a year of favor to the Lord. And he sits down, and he sits down, and everyone's looking at him. And the reason they're still looking at him is because a rabbi would do the reading standing up and then sit down to give a commentary. And all he says is, today these words are fulfilled in your hearing. Now he's already been gaining a reputation. He's already been doing healing and teaching. And he comes home and he says this. And at first it says, all spoke highly of him. Then of course, huh?
What does that mean, or how does that go along with them then running him out of the temple?
Well, that's the part. There's two ways that people try and interpret it, and there's one we've heard a lot. So I want to focus on the second one. They speak highly of him. They apparently something he says resonated. They kind of want to believe him, and they speak highly of him. Everyone's like, whoa, yeah, Jesus, like, yeah, you're the man. The way you read that resounded with us, or this makes sense given your reputation. God is doing a great thing. And it says, they also said, is this not the son of Joseph? Now, usually we read, isn't this the son of Joseph? And we think they're kind of calling him down, and they're saying, some people are speaking highly, but other people are saying, really, that's Joseph's kid. Joseph's kid is the Messiah. Are you kidding me? You all saw him grow up. And they're kind of put him back down in his place. In some of the other Gospels, it's very clear that's what they're trying to do. In one of the other Gospels, Jesus comes to his hometown and they say, isn't this the son of Mary? Which, if you name the mother instead of the father, you're basically saying the father isn't his real father. And they're basically saying, oh, isn't this that single mom's kid? And they're insulting him. Another gospel, they say, isn't this the carpenter's son? Which might have been derogatory. We don't know what sort of dignity the carpenter job held, but it probably wasn't the highest paid job. It was more like a day laborer thing. This, they say, isn't this the son of Joseph? The way the other Gospels tell it, you want to think they're putting him in his place, but we can also read this and say, wow, they're saying, and this is the son of Joseph. This is our hometown boy. We are the town that this God is doing great works from. And all of a sudden, you see it's becoming about them. It's becoming about us. He's being like, oh my gosh, he is the son of Joseph. He was born and raised here. And Jesus, hearing them speak highly of him, and then start to talk about his roots here in Nazareth, he says, okay, physician, cure yourself. And next you're going to say, do here in your native place what was done in Capernaum. Next thing, they're going to want him to show power. And are they going to want him to do that because they want to praise God, or they want it to happen in their hometown, in the midst of them? They want a little bit of ownership of the Messiah, or whatever prophet, or whatever they think Jesus is. And he does this, and then he goes on further, and he says, no, a prophet is not accepted in his native place. He said, many widows in Israel and Elijah, but he went to Zarephath in Sidon. There were many lepers in the time of Elisha. And by the way, Mickey distinguished between Elijah and Elisha. Very good job, because I suck at that. So I appreciate it. But Naaman the Syrian was cleansed. That's the story from Kings. This king from another country comes who's a leper, and he bathes in the Jordan, and he's healed. When I read this, or at least according to the way I prayed with it and read commentaries, he's saying, this is so much bigger than us here. I have to go out. I have to go even to the Gentiles. And I have to spread this out. This is not about us. This is not about our town. This is not about my dad's house. This is not about our synagogue. This is a big mission. And when he gives that, makes that implication, that's when they reject it. They say, they're kind of thinking, no, we want something, a hometown thing. We want a share in this glory. We don't want to have to go out and work. We want it coming to us. Where he's saying, no, it's got to be something that's going out. This isn't a show. It's not a celebration. It's a mission. And that's when they rise up and drive him out of the town, and they say, no. We'd rather kill you than have to go out and spread the word and work with you. I don't know if that's what Luke means to say, but I think it's a way to look at it that really, really points at us for how we can kind of trap God in our own mindset, and how we can be ready to throw God away when the Word of God or what God's offering us is not comfortable or doesn't fit in our own sense of kind of validation and enjoyment and all that. Now a couple just small notes. When he says native place, he uses the word patris. So he could be saying in my hometown, in Nazareth, I'm not ultimately going to be welcome. I'm going to be rejected because I'm being prophetic. I'm not just being a kind of a firework act. I'm not being just a good vibes thing. But he might also be saying country, because patris is where we get patria, which is homeland, and in a Romance language, that's what you're going to hear for a country, not a town. So that fits in with the whole Gentile thing. This is going out and beyond. And this is the Gospel of Luke. Luke is all about the gospel being spread to the Gentiles, because Luke also wrote and witnessed Acts, and he saw the gospel being spread to the Gentiles. So he wanted to accent and highlight all the times Jesus gave an indication that was going to happen. Then, of course, the last thing is the hill. Just a couple things worth noting. And Nazareth is on a hill. They want to throw him off of it. The hill would have been a place, and I forget which author said this. I was reading about it, but he said that hill, you could see so many battles, and you could see so much of the history of Israel from that hill, that it was also almost symbolic in itself, because this is almost a symbol of them throwing him down from the vantage point they have of what God is doing for them, throwing him off the map, more or less. And I don't know if that's what they're thinking, or they're just thinking, oh, we don't have any rope. Hanging this guy would take too long. Let's just throw him off the hill. I don't know, but it's also interesting that he just passes through the midst of them. It's not his time, and they can't touch him, which is interesting, because that points to when Jesus does give himself up, he's doing it willingly.
That wouldn't be the same hill where Jesus was taken up and the devil tempted him and said, push you over and let your angels pick you up.
Well, we don't know, and I'm going to offer a little correction, Marianne. I'm nitpicking here. When he says jump off, they're sitting on the top of the temple. It's when he takes them up to the hill, that's when they see all the kingdoms of the world. So I don't know. It would have been a better temptation if he was on the hill in his hometown and he could see everything around him, though, wouldn't it? But, yeah, good question. Yes.
You're not gonna like what I have to say.
Oh, I never like what you have to say, but I love you and we deal with it.
Well, as much as I try to read these stories and understand them and get to the point, this one I just don't like the story. Are you allowed to not like something in there? I just
Yeah.
like. I think that from what I read, his homies had him there. They were proud. They had their home guy there. They listened to what he said. They liked what he said, and they were amazed. And it's a very human emotion to feel a connection with someone who has gone out and done well in the world when they're from your hometown. And I feel like that's what they were doing, because it doesn't really say that they say anything bad to him, but immediately he starts in on this Elijah and this Elijah thing, and then they sort of get upset and God, to me, and I'm sure that Luke is making a point about taking the word to the Gentiles, but that just doesn't come across to me, because to me this is God not understanding human emotion. The way that it's written here, like his homies were proud, they were happy to have him home, and it turned into a thing where they got angry and then he had to go in the midst. And so this isn't my favorite story.
I totally respect that. It sounds like he's being really dismissive of them, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just not my favorite story.
Yeah, that's fine. If we read everything in the Bible and liked it, then it probably wouldn't be a very useful book to
I
us.
just feel like the point that he's trying to make doesn't come across in the way that he was trying to make it to my head.
Well,
And my head's weird.
well, and that's exactly why I said earlier, I see him saying this in a kind of somber way where he's trying to help people understand. But I don't know. I like to imagine Jesus saying the hard things, looking in someone's eye with a lot of compassion and saying, this is the truth and I hate to drop it on you like this. But I don't know. Some people like to imagine Jesus, wagging his finger and putting people in their place.
No.
But, yeah. We'll never know. Well, we will know, but we have to wrestle with the fine points and trust in God to help us when we get in those situations, I guess. Just a couple takeaways, because we're running long, and there's got another appointment coming. Understanding the Word of God runs through all of these. Jeremiah has a word that's intimidating to him, and he has to preach it to people who don't want to understand it. St. Paul is talking about an understanding or a knowledge of God that goes beyond the knowledge and the way that we perceive God now. And Jesus is pointing out to these people in his hometown that they don't really understand the prophecy. They're twisting it. They're making it about them. And that without, and then we go, every prophecy, there's going to be two things: resistance and providence. God, most of the prophets are martyrs in a way, but their message lives on through something God does. While there's resistance, it's not their strength that makes that message go out. And that's where people get in trouble, because we start relying on their strength. It's God's providence, God giving someone a message, and God bringing that message through to people in the face of resistance. God tells Jeremiah he's going to do it, And Jesus, you see it right away because he makes his prophecy and then just, I can't, it looks so comical when I picture, but I picture him kind of like shimmying through people or something when they would have all had their hands on him. But there's this providential escape. And the other thing I think is love versus prestige. One of Thomas Aquinas listed 4 things, 4 basic temptations we all have that we try and replace God with. One of them was honor or prestige. And we often do throw God under the bus for that. Instead of the truth, we focus on something that centers around us. And in all these readings, there's a temptation between being seen well in the eyes of other people, whether it's in Corinth, where your spiritual gift gave you a lot of status, whether it's Jeremiah, who's going to his status is about to go downhill to lovingly proclaim the truth to people, or whether it's Jesus looking at these people and saying, I don't think you really love God, I think you love the prestige of having me among you. But love doesn't pursue its own interests. The loving person doesn't pursue something that's going to reflect good on them. They pursue what's best for the other person. And maybe that's something for all of us to take forward. So, give me just a moment. Actually, I'll do this with the camera. Hi, camera. Just a couple of shameless plugs. February 1st, that's next Tuesday, we're starting the Fully Alive Health and Wellness series here at the Mount. And we've got 4 health experts who are coming in to do interactive presentations and exercises with people. We did a poll in the summer what people wanted, and people said they were really interested in learning more about health. So we've got 3 health coaches, an epidemiologist, a personal trainer, and there's only 4 of them, but they share all those accolades together.
What's an epidemiologist?
Someone who studies diseases. And they're going to be here. They're actually here right now waiting for me because we're going to test our equipment. So if you walk by and there's a really handsome, in-shape person, say hi.
What time are they doing this?
It's Tuesdays all throughout February at 6:30. There's a flyer over on the table. And the other thing happening late in February is Food for the Soul. When we did the survey, people also said, we said, what do you want to do? And people, thank God, they said retreats, number 1. But number 2 was we want to eat. So what we're doing is it's a food tasting event. And we're featuring local, sustainable, ethical, faith-based, and minority-owned businesses. So we've got a lot of eateries that are making the world a better place by supporting them. And we're going to have a band, and you come, you eat, you drink, and hopefully we'll all have a good time. So, so you can show up day of, and what you do is you buy tickets that you trade for the different food, and that way we can track which restaurants are the best. You can buy those online now, or you can just buy them a la carte day of. If you buy them online now, we know people are coming, and we can tell the restaurants, don't worry, people are coming. We know people are coming, but yeah. So that's all. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, and have a wonderful week.